Folks, we do this every day, all year, to watch ball and to talk ball. That's why we're here. We are college football junkies. So appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is the place to be each and every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So it's a daily show that we start on Sunday with the call-in show at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we wrap up the big college football weekend with the call-in show every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, then go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 10. I know this is a lot to take in. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Then you got to do that time zone conversion if you don't live in the EST. And then we've got Thursday and Friday after the ball games, post game. So that is TBD, to be determined based on the games, the matchups, and the competitiveness of those games. So we do appreciate you stopping by. And then, of course, Sunday, or of course, Saturday, that's when they play college football. Saturday is a huge day here at the Voice of College Football. Instant analysis. We appreciate your response to those. And then, of course, we've got our big post-game show on Saturday. We're going to run through week 6, look at all the big matchups, do as much as we possibly can in the 1 hour that we have. Keep in mind, Ohio State Buckeyes Live is at 11 a.m. Eastern time. What a day. Check out the scroll below. I made a special ticker for Wednesday. We have 11 shows on Wednesday. 11. And I only host 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So I pretty much have the day off to slack. I only host 6 shows on Wednesday, but we've got 11 here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Bill Bender stopping by from Sporting News. So we look forward to that. But in the meantime, why don't we take calls? And we've got our guy, Caden, on the line. Caden, what's going on?
Good morning, Mark. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Week 6 of the college football season. It is crazy that it's already week 6.
Absolutely. It's tough to imagine, but here we are.
And Ohio State is one of the very few undefeated teams in college football as of week 6 right now. Let's get that clear fact out of the way.
Yeah, I haven't done a count on undefeated teams, but it's probably around 20.
20, and one other team I'm looking forward to seeing how well they do is Miami. Friend of the channel, Slim Shady Canes, big Miami fan. He's been excited. Congratulations on the 38-34 victory over Virginia Tech. That was a battle.
Yeah, it was a heck of a ball game, and obviously a controversial finish, which I actually think that the officials got right somehow.
Yeah, that's something I can agree on with you. There were some other things I wanted to talk to you about, including the Big 12, actually. I know I'm not much of a Big 12 person myself, but you know what? I gotta give some light to the Big 12. Great conference, though. I honestly, as a Buckeye fan, I could see I'd say maybe 2 or 3 teams maybe going to the playoffs, finals.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion because, you know, I just feel like Ohio State needs better competition, in the postseason because it just it's slacking this season.
Well, I don't think it's going to be slacking starting on Saturday. I think for the next 7 or 8 games, Ohio State's got quite the schedule they've got to navigate.
No, now, hear me out, Mark. The only reason I say that Ohio State schedule is slacking is because not only did let me point out, Iowa's had a good amount of schedule, like in their schedule, but I mean, not really. Oregon struggled against UCLA in the first two halves. In the first 2 halves of that game, Dylan Gabriel, threw I believe maybe 1 or 2 interceptions. And then Michigan struggling against Minnesota. Yeah, that tells me those 2 teams really need to get their themselves organized before they play Ohio State. Because if they don't, it's going to be bad news for both of them, and I guarantee you.
Yeah. So aside from Oregon, I don't see any team that is necessarily on the same level as Ohio State as it stands right now. But I think that navigating, well, Penn State, we got Penn State as well on the road, but navigating Iowa, then into Oregon, then into Penn State a few weeks later. There's a Nebraska game in there. Indiana's playing much better. So it's not necessarily that any one team is Ohio State's equal. That remains to be seen. I don't believe they are. Oregon, though, on the road, once you throw in the road factor and the travel factor, but it's more about the accumulation of games, the accumulation of fairly difficult games.
No, I see what you mean, but the thing is, the reason I didn't mention Penn State was because I know that that's going to be a 50-point shutout against Penn State at home or on the road in Happy Valley.
You don't believe that?
With the defense that we have, that's been absolutely a terrorizer. And plus, Jeremiah Smith and Cornell Tate being the two best receivers in the Big Ten right now. I mean, you cannot. I mean, let's be honest. That one-handed catch and double coverage from Jeremiah Smith, you cannot cover that dude. That dude is an absolute stud, and I foresee him giving Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan some problems.
Well, wide receiver is the most dependent position on the field.
I mean, I get that point, but let's not forget.
So the offensive line has to do its job. The quarterback has to do its job, and you've elevated Cornell Tate above Emeka Egbuka.
No disrespect to my buddy Emeka Egbuka, but I mean, Cornell Tate, let's be honest, he's a stud. And even when I talk to, Emeka Egbuka and all them the other time, because I do hang out with them sometimes and they come to my work, it's respect. That's why. Because that dude is an absolute stud. I mean, Emeka Egbuka, amazing dude in the slot. But when you need the deep passes and you need the downfield passes, Cornell Tate and Jeremiah Smith are your guys downfield. And as far as that, and let's not forget about that defense. That defense led by a really good defensive line with some good linebackers, including Peyton the Punisher Pierce and Garrett Stover, along with that backfield with Jordan Hancock and Denzel Burke. You cannot go wrong with a veteran experienced defense with some really good guys on the defensive line, with some new guys, switching them out, giving them some time to play. And plus getting Peyton Pierce and Garrett Stover some time to play at linebacker with C.J. Hicks. You cannot argue. That defense will be smoking Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan, and they will will be having some problems, including Alex Orji over at Michigan. And I think I've said enough, because clearly that defense can show anybody they can cause anybody problems.
Are we talking about Arvell Reese at linebacker? Is that who we're talking about?
No, I said C.J. Hicks at linebacker, along with Peyton Pierce and Garrett Stover. If you didn't hear me clearly, the two freshmen.
All right.
But I'm going to guarantee you Ohio State's defense will be causing Iowa problems, will be causing Penn State problems, and they will be causing Oregon problems, and they will be causing Michigan problems. I guarantee you that. And I've said that twice this week, because clearly somebody did not write down his notes, clearly.
Yeah. Well, you're making very obvious points. So, yes, I think I don't think that the biggest Ohio State hater in the country is going to say in any way that Ohio State's not going to give other teams problems. Pitching shutouts, though, is another thing. Considering they can't shut out Akron or Marshall, I'm highly doubting any shutouts in these games.
You can say that you don't believe that defense won't put out shutouts,
No,
but
I don't see any shutouts coming. Maybe
I do
one.
foresee.
If they get one shutout, then I will be surprised.
I guarantee you 3 shutouts plus this year by that defense and offense.
And you guarantee this. And if it doesn't happen, then what are the consequences?
Listen, there's no consequences. I'm going to tell you that. But I just guarantee that because that defense has worked hard enough, and they have had enough of Michigan's crap to have it. So let's be honest, that defense will be putting out shutouts, and I guarantee it.
Okay, you guarantee it, but there's no accountability. So guarantees are worthless if there's no accountability to it. So okay, so anything else on this fine day?
No, but go Bucks, and we'll be seeing all of y'all in the national championship when we win. And guess what? I'll be saying, "I told you so."
Okay, very good. Picking Ohio State to win the national championship is not unreasonable. I think maybe we have other people involved in the show that may have picked Ohio State to win the national championship. They certainly could. The odds of them doing it is, of course, well less than 50% against the field, but that's a reasonable selection. It's not so much Ohio State winning a national championship, but pitching at least 3 shutouts. That I have to see. That I am going to have to see. All right, we got Minnesota Dave on the line, and look forward to this conversation. Dave, how's it going?
I'm doing good, Mark. How about you?
I am doing just fine. What's the good word today?
Oh, just, it's a nice day in Minnesota. Finally getting the fall weather. We've been having 80-degree weather the whole entire time and no rain. So we had a little bit of a dry spell. But my question is, what does the committee do when we have the non-Power 5 school to be looked at when, let's say, Army Navy go undefeated going into the American Conference Championship game, and then they would have to play each other they play each other again as a non-conference teams. Well, I guess they're as a non-conference opponent, even though they're in the same conference now. In mid-December. Do they wait? Because let's just say that one school is let's say Navy is just behind Boise State.
Yeah, it's a
Navy
great.
have to win out?
That is a tremendous scenario that you're laying out there, because I've looked at that in other seasons with a lot less at stake, but just looking at bowl play. And for example, last year, I'm almost positive last year, Army won the Navy game to finish 6-6, but they didn't go to a bowl game because they didn't have bowl eligibility in time to select or be chosen for a bowl game. So they didn't get to a bowl game because that game was played so late. But you're raising a whole different scenario that muddies up the whole CFP. So congratulations to you, Dave, because I love these kind of scenarios. So I would love to see what would happen in that situation. They play on December 14th. The conference championship games are, I believe, if that's a Saturday, then what? 2 Saturdays before that. The conference championship games must be on the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the selection's made the next morning on the 8th. That is a great question. Maybe they would just, I don't know. The easy way out would be if they're both undefeated, and let's say Boise State stumbles, and it's a clear just winner take all. The winner gets into the playoff. But if one of them, say Navy's 8-2 or 9-2, I guess they would be, and Army, that let's say only one of them is in contention for a playoff spot, and they have to wait until maybe they just make that a open spot. That is a great conundrum, because the remedy isn't fair. To me, the remedy would be, okay, we've got this open spot, and let's say Army's undefeated, and let's say Navy's lost 2 or 3 games, so they're out of it. But it's up to Army either making it or not making it, that they leave that spot open and just say, well, if Army wins, they're in. If they lose, Boise State's in. But that's unfair to Boise State because they can't prep for a game. Like everybody else is going to have a week to prepare for their matchup. So that's not fair.
Yeah, that's
I love that scenario. Do you mind if I steal that for a video?
Yeah, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I love that.
Because that's the conundrum that I think that they have when it comes to the highest ranked right now, the highest ranked non-power five school, because it let's because if they'll have like big wins, both Army and Navy, if they go undefeated before the championship game,
Yeah.
they would both have wins over Notre Dame.
Yeah,
And
well, that I'm going to have to see. But you raise a great scenario. It's highly unlikely, of course, because Notre Dame's better than those teams, and that will probably knock out both of them. But it's a phenomenal scenario. I
mhm.
love that scenario, and we'll have to throw that one at our guest today. Anything else, Dave? We got to move on to our guest today.
Oh, nothing else. I just was thinking about it, and I'm surprised that you said about the bowl game thing, because the Gophers went to the Motor City Bowl because of academics.
Yes.
Why couldn't they just wait for the Army Navy game to be over and have Army or Navy that time play in the Motor City Bowl? Because the Gophers didn't deserve to go to a bowl game that year.
I think it's simply because of courtesy to the teams and the coaches to make that selection as soon as possible and not have people waiting around for over a week to determine whether they're going to be playing a game. So that Motor City bowl game that Minnesota played was just a day or two after Christmas. So you're talking December 26th, 27th. If they were going to wait until the Army-Navy game on whatever the date was, the 12th or the 13th, then you're disadvantaging Minnesota or whomever gets that extra spot if that Army-Navy game breaks a certain way to prepare for their opponent, and they're just kind of in limbo for 10 days.
Yeah, that's the problem with this Army-Navy game occasionally.
Yep.
Well, I'll talk to you later, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate you being here.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, let's move it on to, we got Bill Bender stopping by from Sporting News, and we always appreciate Bill and his insight into college football with Week 6 on the way. Bill, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. Our last caller brought up quite the conundrum, and I enjoy these kind of situations. Army and Navy now play in the American Conference. They, of course, play the last regular season game of every college football season. If one or both of them are involved in the CFP race as an undefeated team, what happens with these selections on, well, as I pointed out to him, the committee gets bailed out if they're both undefeated, and let's say Boise State's lost and it's just a winner take all, then it's just an open spot, just like an NCAA first four game going into the rest of the 64 tournament. But if only one of them's in play, they can't have a Boise State sitting around for 10 days waiting for this game to be played to determine if they're in the playoff or not. It's just kind of an interesting possibility that's likely not to happen.
Well, I mean, is it likely? I mean, Navy's pretty good. They put it on Memphis a couple weeks ago. So, and I didn't like it last year. Wasn't it where they had to forfeit bowl eligibility essentially to play the game because they weren't going to wait?
That's what I pointed out to our caller. Yes.
And I didn't like that because it's disrespectful to the two academies. I do enjoy academy football a great deal because part of it is, my college roommate was Ben Grobe. His dad was Jim Grobe, who was an assistant. He was a coach at Ohio University, was the defensive coordinator at Air Force. So I have an affinity for academy football because, it starts with, these guys are serving our country and then goes beyond that. And you can see the passion in which they play. So if Navy or Army were in that situation, of course it would happen in year one, wouldn't it? Where we'd have to deal with this, where we'd have this potential problem. Boise State's pretty good. And I do think the problem will eventually solve itself. But whenever you leave yourself a little flaw in the Death Star, which this is, inevitably it could happen.
They both play Notre Dame. So that's probably where this scenario comes to an end. But like you, my affinity for the military academies is, number one, that they're serving our country. So they've got a much higher calling. Number two, because of that, football is so far down the priority list that it amazes me that these schools can routinely compete with. I'm not saying that Navy and Army compete on a regular basis or that they're not occasionally getting blown out, but when they step on the field against upper tier Power 5 competition and routinely stay in the game and make it a competitive game, that astounds me. And then thirdly, just from the stylistic standpoint of, unless you're a coach watching these games, all these offenses tend to look the same. Everybody's copied everyone for the most part, and it's fun for me to watch a different style of football.
Oh yeah, and they've had some upsets or nearly pulled some upsets. I was actually at the game where a couple years ago Army should have beat Michigan. They had the ball down by the goal line, and for some reason they threw the ball, and Michigan got an interception and
Missed a
rode that
field
one.
goal.
Yes, and they had opportunities. I've seen Navy play tight with Ohio State when they had Dobbs at quarterback. So it's not like these things can't happen. And it was very enjoyable. So, and being around, Air Force a little bit, so I've known Troy Calhoun for a while, and just the probably the thing that, and I think people understand this, they don't get transfers. They can't you don't use the transfer portal at a service academy. And, for them to be able to have the roster turnover they have, Air Force is struggling a little bit this year because they lost a lot of starters, and that will happen. So I'm very interested to see how these two progress this season. I was very impressed and eye-opening that Navy beat Memphis the way that they did, and we'll see how far they can take this thing. To your point that it'll probably solve itself, Boise State's pretty good. And Boise State has a running back right now averaging 10.3 yards per carry. Ashton Gienti, if you haven't watched him, I would encourage all your listeners to do so. He is absolutely incredible.
And a few people, without looking at the schedule, may think, it's Boise State. Watch him run against Oregon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just tearing through guys. He's been a really good running back and one of the top of the nation for a while now, but I think he's starting to get his due on the national stage. Got Bill Bender here from Sporting News breaking down week 6 of college football. So I'll leave the stage wide open for you to take it wherever you'd like in regards to week 6 matchups that intrigue you.
Well, I don't know if I've used this line on your show yet, but I was told by an editor years ago when it's never tell somebody the weekend's bad. Obviously we don't have a ton of meat on the schedule in terms of ranked matchups. It's kind of an appetizer for next weekend, but the fact that there are 2 top 10 teams that are underdogs this weekend, Missouri being one at Texas A&M, that's the only ranked game of the week. Big test for the Tigers. I think everybody just wants to push the Tigers away, get them out of the way, but they did have a bye week. I think Texas A&M's limited in some things they can do in the passing game. So that'll be a fun game. Missouri going down to College Station. And then Michigan and Washington. This was the national championship game last year, but when you turn that TV on, you won't know it. Coaching staff's different. So many players missing on both sides. And the Wolverines have struggled in the passing game, and they're underdogs on the road against a Washington team that has struggled. So, those are the 2 that jump out off the page. That one's at 7:30, and I'll be at Ohio State, Iowa. So this is Ohio State's first kind of, with all due respect to Michigan State, this is the first kind of complete team that they're going to play, despite Iowa's offense, whatever those offensive limitations are.
We had our Iowa show yesterday with Corey Brada, brought on Pat Murphy of Bucknuts, and we've got an Ohio State hour coming up at 11, everyone, with our crew, Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, and Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Huddle.
I know those guys.
You know those guys.
I sit by Tony in the press box all the time. So tell them I said hi.
We'll absolutely do that. And we appreciate those guys been doing a weekly show with us for like 5 years. So good stuff out of them. Do you think Iowa has a legitimate shot?
Not really. But I am intrigued to see how Ohio State does against that defense. And Iowa does have a good defense. They roll coverage as well. They keep everything in front as good as anybody. If Ohio State were to go out in this game and win like 45-7, then you'd kind of be like, okay, this is real. This is not just a team beating up on inferior competition that they are. I do think Ohio State is the most complete team in the country. I don't know if they're the best team. I don't know. I get how that sounds like a political answer, and we just watched a debate last night. But the way I would put it is, I do think they have the best roster. They're the most complete, but they don't have the benefit of playing in these high-level SEC showdowns that we're going to see every week. They're not going to have a game like Georgia, Alabama. They're not going to have a game like October 19th where Tennessee is playing Alabama and Texas is playing Georgia. But that doesn't – all they have to do is win the games. Caleb Johnson, what do you think about him? Can he get going against this Ohio State defense? If he can't, it'll be over pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think that is, I'm not going to call it an advantage. I'll call it a question mark at this point, would be Iowa's offensive line against Ohio State's defensive line, which is extremely good. But that Iowa has a chance on both lines of scrimmage, and certainly Ohio State's offensive line is a question as being upgraded over last year's edition, and with getting some pieces in place here in the last couple of weeks on the left side, they look better equipped to take on Big Ten play. But I just think that's where Iowa has a chance to create a stalemate and muck up the game, as they are apt to do.
Well, and then when they pass, Luke Lachey, we know his dad, Jim, and being a local kid from Grandview, and he's a key piece for their passing game. Can he get behind the linebackers? Can he find seams against this tremendously talented Ohio State secondary? I think that's, of all the things that have stood out about the Buckeyes to me, I know Jeremiah Smith pops up first. Everybody's going to talk about him. He's been fantastic. The running game, 2 running backs that just bull into people. Will Howard and the offensive line, great. Their defense is amazing. Their defense is not allowing much. Other than that opening drive against Marshall, they've been pretty on point all year. So I want to see if they can just dominate this game. And like I said, last week against Michigan State, I think my final score was 38-10. So I kind of anticipated that. And this week I have it at 34-7. So, which would mean that's pretty dominant. If they push it past 34-7 and it's like 48-7, then you're going to think, okay, they are this much better than one of the second tier teams in the Big Ten. I don't know that they'll get challenged. It is a very good setup appetizer game for Oregon on October 12th, obviously. But right now, Mark, I don't know if you feel the same way. I think they're a lot better than Oregon.
It's funny you say that. That was going to be my next comment. Was going to be that I believe that Ohio State is not just the best team in the Big Ten, but they're decidedly the best team in the Big Ten. But of course, they have all these matchups to prove it. And I'm not saying that they're going to go out there like our buddy who called a couple callers ago, one of our callers who says they're going to shut out Penn State and Oregon. That's a bit extreme. But yeah, I do think that decidedly they're the best team in the Big Ten until proven otherwise. Speaking of scenarios, Bill, and this is maybe a little bit too early to dive into this, but this is what a lot of people talked about with the expansion of these conferences and the lack of games between, we could go down a list of teams in the Big Ten that don't play each other, that are contenders. There could be some crazy either tie for second place or huge tie for first place, with USC not playing Ohio State and Oregon, Rutgers having this ridiculously easy schedule where they don't play anybody but USC. They don't play Iowa, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, none of them. On and on. Oregon, Ohio State, of course, they meet. Ohio State meets Penn State, but we could have some crazy tie of one-loss teams at the top of the conference.
Yeah, and Indiana is another X Factor team in there. I'm wondering, I was going to ask you this. They're ranked. They're good. Curtis Rourke playing fantastic football. Kills me because he's an Ohio quarterback and could be doing that for my Bobcats. But, I'm wondering if they go out to Northwestern in that weird facility against that pretty good best defense they've faced. And I'm wondering if that's going to be close. If they blow out Northwestern, I'm going to say, okay, they're going to be undefeated when they play at the end of the year. They play Michigan, Ohio State back-to-back. And if we rewind to January, and Kurt Cignetti was in Bloomington in the gym saying, calling out Michigan, Ohio State, and everybody laughed about it. All of a sudden, I'm thinking in my head, they could beat Michigan in Bloomington pretty easily. Honestly, they could not easily win. I'm not
Sure.
like they can win that game, and I don't know that they can beat Ohio State, but man, that'd be interesting if they were at the end of the road. These tiebreakers you're talking about, Rutgers' schedule is set up that they should be okay. This Penn State USC game on October 12th is huge for that because Penn State needs that one. And they need to, they play Ohio State. We're going to have a tiebreaker in one of these years. It'll be ironic if it's in year one. When you have 18 teams, you don't have divisions, you have imbalanced schedules, inevitably something like this is going to happen.
Yeah, the first indicator for me on Indiana just being a decent team was, okay, these games against FIU and Charlotte that used to be just going back one season, shoot, Akron missed a field goal or would have beaten Indiana. These have gone from Tom Allen winning these games by 7 or 10 or 13 points to just trucking these teams as like a top level team would. And then the second step was going to UCLA. I know that they're not that good, but still just laying waste to UCLA and then beating Maryland to pass them up in the standings, pass them up in the hierarchy by 2 scores. We haven't seen that. So they are showing week to week that they are a force to be reckoned with to some degree.
They're averaging 48.8 points per game, same as Ohio State. And you said it, like in the past, you would watch those games and be like, Indiana might lose today. And they're playing a MAC school. And even when they were good with Tom Allen, it wasn't coming this easy. So the combination of Kurt Cignetti and Curtis Rourke, defense is playing well. They're putting up big numbers. They're doing it unapologetically. And but I again, this is the first kind of UCLA's defense isn't very good. Maryland's defense isn't very good. This is Northwestern is kind of like I was saying about Iowa. They're pretty good at keeping you in front. They lost 24-5 against Washington in one of the weirdest games of the year, but Washington still has some athletes. I think the talent gap between Indiana and Northwestern isn't very high. I haven't checked the weather. Sorry about that. But I just assume if you're in October in Evanston, it's going to be windy. So, yeah, that could be an interesting game.
Yeah, just ask CJ Stroud about wind at Northwestern in October for sure. We got Bill Bender here from Sporting News, and we know you need to run, Bill. I am intrigued by Rutgers and Nebraska. We can put them on the fringe as well. Nebraska, of course, lost that entertaining Friday night game against Illinois. Another intriguing team to me is Illinois, even though that they lost at Penn State. They hung around until about 4 or 5 minutes left. Even though they were being controlled the entire game, they stayed within one score. But Nebraska continues to lose one-score games, but it's pretty obvious they're a better football team, and they need to get over that hurdle. And I don't know that Rutgers is the best team for them to get over that hurdle because they'll go in there, and they certainly won't be awed or intimidated by going to Lincoln.
Rutgers loves to win ugly. They did that last week. They hurt you on third down. They make third down tough for opponents. They can win the turnover battle. They will test Nebraska up front, and they will try to confuse Dylan Raiola. That is a really underrated good game on the Big Ten schedule this week, and it's one Nebraska has to have. I don't know if we talked a couple weeks ago, but before the Illinois game, I was confident that Nebraska would just dominate that game. And then they've done everything under Matt Rule except win the one-score game. And they really need to win one, I think, for a program psyche standpoint. So if that one's tight, late in the fourth quarter, you're probably picking Rutgers to win until Nebraska proves you otherwise.
Exactly. Psyche standpoint. And also a lot of people question Dylan Raiola after that game. Give the guy a break. He's a true freshman. That's the first time he's ever been under the gun. The Colorado game was the first one that obviously there was a lot of hype going into the game, but they took care of business so quickly in the first quarter. There was no pressure there once the game got underway, and they were truly dominant. But that's the first time he's played in a pressure situation with the game on the line, the last couple drives of the game, overtime. And, you got to expect that to be a learning experience for him.
You think that's a one-score game too, right? Like, am I misreading that game? That I don't know that Rutgers is going to go in there and be overwhelmed. So I think that's one of those fun games where we're still trying to figure out. I think between you and I, we know who the first tier of the Big Ten is. Unless I'm wrong, it's Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. I would throw Michigan in there for because they beat USC. But if Michigan loses, it's easy to flip those two. It's the second grouping. Is it Rutgers? Is it Indiana? Is it, Iowa, Michigan, USC? That's that group. So, I mean, it's fun to sort out. And Nebraska's trying to push into there and stay into there. And they're still on the border to meet. We do our 1 to 134 each week. And we have them at we have Rutgers at 30 and Nebraska at 32. And people were asking me, why is Indiana ranked over those schools? I said, well, they're undefeated and people love offense. We look at it. Indiana's ranked over Rutgers because we like the offense.
Yeah, you're evaluating the complete team and what they've done against those opponents. And I love what you guys do with the 1 through 134 because it was funny, somebody commented this week that Arizona should be ranked. And I commented back knowing that they wouldn't understand. I said they are ranked. That they just don't include them on the list. They just stop listing them at 25. They're at 28 or 29, and there's no different process for the rest of the teams on that list in the AP or the coaches poll. They just stop putting them on the list. Right. So I love the 1 through 134 because there's just some kind of magical cliff that drops after 25 that in reality doesn't exist.
Well, I would say for me, and I do that for us every week, the hard part is not the 25. I'm glad we're on the same page because it's not the 25. The hard part is 30 through 60.
Oh, yes.
It's just because you're like, well, Rutgers beat this team or this team beat this team. How do we differentiate? Basically, like what you said, Rutgers, Indiana's ranked now. How do you put Rutgers and Nebraska? We have Nebraska ranked over Colorado, for example. And that's pretty easy. So why isn't Colorado ranked higher? They could win the Big 12. Well, Nebraska beat them not that long ago. And then you get down into the group of 5 schools. That's actually fun for me to do because you stay up on them and you stay up on the MAC teams, the Sun Belt teams. And then you get to the bottom and then you start to feel sorry for those schools because you're like, I want this school to win one so I can push them up just a little bit. But it's a fun exercise we do every week. And I'm surprised, honestly, at the amount of people that read it. Because I just assume we all gravitate toward the 12-team playoff rush, but then you realize, hey, there's 134 schools out there.
So we produce a top 25, and we call it the top 25 that actually makes sense, and it's a resume-driven. So, for example, this week, and people that come across it that don't understand the process, or don't believe in my approach. So, for example, Ohio State's 19 this week. That just blows people's minds. Well, it's a resume ranking. They'll get there. Just they don't have a resume right now. It's not good. And then I also, just to fool with people a little bit, one week I made it 37. I just wanted to prove the point. There's nothing magical about 25. It's just a number. It's just an arbitrary number. It used to be 20 for those of us old enough so it's just an arbitrary number. And just to bring one example to light we could go through thousands. I don't like this. Yes, they're ranked. They're not ranked. PJ Fleck had back-to-back 9 and 4 teams at Minnesota that did not get ranked in the final rankings. And that's going to be on his resume when, how many times did Minnesota finish ranked under PJ Fleck? Once. They could have been 3 times. There were other 9 and 4 teams that were ranked in the final top 25. Sure. So I don't believe in this. You drop off a cliff if you don't make the 25.
Did you have Alabama over Texas? Because I struggled with that over the weekend.
I did.
I agree with that because they went to Wisconsin and they took care of business against Georgia. Now, Texas, again, here's what we're doing. And I'm going to love talking to you as the season goes on because Georgia, to me, Texas is probably better than Alabama, what I'm watching, but Alabama has a better resume. Texas is complete too. And Ohio State's complete. And Alabama's complete. And I need to see Tennessee play one of these heavyweights because I'm excited to see that because the thing that Tennessee and Ohio State both have, and I subscribe to this, it's the most basic statistic possible, but Tennessee and Ohio State are the only two teams in the country right now that rank in the top 5 in scoring offense and the top 5 in scoring defense. Don't care who you play. If you score more points than everybody else and you give up fewer points, that means you're playing that coaching cliche, complementary football. And those two schools are doing it as good as anybody right now. And that's why I think for judgment's sake, same with Tennessee this weekend, right? They go to Arkansas. If they go to Arkansas and beat them like 35-7, be like, yeah, they're still for real. They're able to go in these road environments and take care of business.
Because even though it's just Arkansas, people need to realize, okay, they went to Auburn and won by 2 scores. They put up 650 yards of total offense against Oklahoma State. And I'm not saying that those teams are good, but they're sound Power 5 talented rosters. And then, of course, they had a 4-point game with Texas A&M. So Arkansas is not a bad football team.
No, and Tennessee is trying to put themselves in this conversation with the defense, the grinded out running game, the young quarterback that they protected a little bit against Oklahoma. When they play Georgia and when they play Alabama, they're going to have to take some more risk with Nico. Yeah. And I think they understand that. But at the same time, I mean, I'm impressed with what I see so far.
And I'm impressed with what I see. Not that that was a fun game to watch against Oklahoma. That was like the game, prime time. So that was my first priority. And it was just an ugly, not entertaining game. But I thought this is impressive because Tennessee's winning a way in which people don't think about Tennessee winning football games.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what we're going to see. So I think between them and when we get to October 19th, again, think about that. All this Ohio State fans, and as you know, I live in Central Ohio too. They're getting frustrated with, well, why is this SEC team leapfrogging us? Well, it's like, again, they have the benefit of these top 5 games. Georgia and Alabama, everybody watched that one. That felt like that was an awesome game to watch. On October 19th, when you get Texas and Georgia and you get Alabama and Tennessee, I was joking the other day, the SEC doesn't even have to promo those games. Everybody's going to watch them because you're going to have potentially, as it stands right now, you'll have 2 top 5 showdowns in your conference on the same day. That's unheard of. And whereas Ohio State, you said it earlier, I think they're decidedly better than Oregon. Penn State intrigues me a little bit because they can run the ball. It's at home. They've got pretty good defense. But how many times have we watched the Penn State-Ohio State movie? It's like I am waiting for a different conclusion on this movie. It's been a while. It's been since 2016 we saw a different ending. So excited to see how those games pan out for sure.
Bill Bender, Sporting News. Anything in particular that you would like to point people to?
No, that you can check out the 1-to-134. And, I will be at Ohio State, Iowa this weekend. I'm really excited to check that out. And they've got me doing a couple NFL things this week. I'm doing a couple. I watched last night the Steelers-Cowboys 1982 Monday Night Football game. And what a blast from the past that was. So those two teams playing prime time, be interesting to see. Go ahead.
Bill, this is not to brag or whatever some people would consider this because I've been told this my whole life. This is just to show how sick I am. Steelers won that game 36-28, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember scores.
I love it. And it was fun to watch because, you see, and I'm not even a Cowboys or Steelers fan, but, the production, the old school, value of the game, some of those, a lot of Hall of Famers on the field. So,
oh, yes,
we're going to definitely, that is showing off almost. That's brilliant. Great job. And, you don't see the Cowboys and Steelers in primetime much. So there'll be a lot of attention on that.
Yes, that was just right at the end of both of their dynasties. Absolutely. The strike season, of course.
I knew we'd get along if you know things like that. You're the best. And thanks for having me as always. I hope we can do this. We're planning on maybe doing it weekly. That would be great.
Let's do that. Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Appreciate you being here, Bill. And again, my admiration for going through 1 through 134, because I do it in the off season, just in terms of program ranking, not a team ranking. And then I do it at the conclusion of every season, but to do that every week, hats off.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Take care.
You too. Bill Bender at Sporting News. Appreciate you, Bill, stopping by. You can obviously observe the knowledge and wisdom there and experience out of Bill. So we appreciate him stopping by. We got our buddy Ben stopping by as well, enjoying the Great outdoors, I see.
I don't know if my audio works at all.
It works. You're here.
Oh, perfect.
We got you.
Well, you're international here in Paris now, so.
Oh, we are international. Now, wink, wink, we're obviously always international. It's the internet, but we get your point, Ben. We get your point.
You're live here in Paris. Yeah, you need to screen your callers, because whoever said they're going to shut out Oregon, your first caller, he's insane.
Well, yes.
Shut out. Win. You can win. You can beat Oregon. That's fine. But shut them out. I don't.
Yeah, we know that's ridiculous. So we've heard Ben from that particular caller now like 5 consecutive days. He came out of nowhere, and now he's calling me every day, which is great. He can call me every day, but he has made ridiculous statements every day, which that's fine.
And shout out to Jackson Johnson. Obviously, a lot of people know him. Shout out to him to helping Spaz tonight with the Oregon show. I appreciate that.
So everybody, we've got our ticker of our Wednesday lineup, including the Oregon show. It's at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific on the Oregon channel tonight, with Jackson leading the way. And even though Ben's not going to be there, still show up.
Yeah, and obviously thanks to Jackson for running the Sunday night show, the After Dark show. I don't know what happened with that stream thing where they had part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just know that I was watching it for a few minutes, and they had like 80 people watching, and then I went somewhere, came back, and they had like 12 people, and I was like, that doesn't happen. What's going on? Oh, they just started another stream. Why'd they do that?
I know. I was trying to figure that out too. I talked to them backstage afterwards. I was like, what happened? It was just some weird anomaly, I guess, with someone ended the stream accidentally. I don't know how that happened, but it's like, hey, that's the risk of live streams. Sometimes stuff goes weird, gets weird.
So Ben, we should take advantage of your Paris trip here and your appearance from Paris. Is this the first time you've been there?
No, this is the 4th or 5th time.
4th or 5th time. I've never been there, so it's obviously a place I need to visit. But do you enjoy it there?
There you go. Here's some views. This is a side street, not a main area, but yeah, no, it's always nice. It's kind of relaxing. It's like a nice 60 degrees, windy, a little rainy, and then in about 2 hours I get to go throw myself underground and risk injury and stuff, for fun.
Folks, if you enjoy this sort of stuff, I got to say, I've checked out, I don't know how many, 12 to 15 videos on Ben's channel. I'm not going to pretend that I'm over there all the time, but I've been fascinated with these explorations. So Exploring with Ben, if people just look up Exploring with Ben on YouTube, they're going to find it, correct?
Oh yeah. It'll come up as and Sam. It's like the first one.
Yeah. Some of these explorations, folks, it's fascinating stuff, what they discover and the peril that they encounter from time to time.
It more sucks that because of this, I won't get back to Houston until midnight Friday. So I'll miss the MSU game. So I'll have to go back and watch it. So we won't do a live post game this week, but me and Spaz will do a recap on Sunday afternoon. Before the After Dark show, we'll do the MSU post game because Jonathan Smith makes his homecoming return to Oregon after abandoning his team.
Yeah, well, I'm not expecting a great game, but Michigan State's improved. Jonathan Smith knows what he's doing, so they're better, but
they're better.
Yeah, I'm guessing the point spread's probably 20 or 25, something in that range.
I'm gonna assume, somewhere in that range of 21 to 25, somewhere in that range.
So, are you the type that, in this situation, tries to keep yourself away from seeing scores and tries to watch that game after the fact, not knowing, or screw it, I want to know the score and then I'll still watch the game and enjoy the game?
I will still watch the game and enjoy it, but I want to stay away from it. I'm really hoping on my flight back from when I'll land in Calgary on the way back, I'll be flying them back to Houston. So during the game will go on during that flight. I'm hoping they have like the live direct TV and I can actually watch the game on the flight. That's what I'm kind of hoping will happen. But I mean, a few years ago when I worked in Africa, people were like, dude, you need to go watch the Oregon TCU game. It was great. And it was, 31-0 and a half. And I'm like, what's good about this? And I was like, immediately like, oh no.
Yeah.
So I don't like to see the scores because I don't want to set myself up for absolute misery.
I hear you. Well, Ben, I appreciate you checking in. This was awesome.
And I got your message. Don't worry. I got it. Big 10 folder.
Yeah, it's the Big Ten folder. Yeah, we're trying to
Big 10
reorganize. We got way too many shows now. We have 11 shows on just today. So
Yeah, I
way
know.
too many shows, trying to organize everything. So there we go. So just do whatever you want with the Big Ten folder.
So,
all right.
Check out the Oregon show tonight with Spaz and Jackson. And shout out to Jackson again for helping out the channel every way he can possible.
Thanks, Jackson. Appreciate you being here for us. Ben, enjoy your trip and continue to do the good work.
All right. You have a good one, Mark.
Thanks, Ben. Exploring with Ben. Again, a great channel here on YouTube, and Ben's doing his first job, but he also, of course, is the host at the Oregon channel, and they've got a big show tonight previewing Michigan State. Jackson with Spaz, and we got Jackson right now in the chat as well. So Jackson, Spaz, 10 p.m. Eastern on the Oregon channel, taking on Michigan State and Jonathan Smith this week. Aiden Childs is going to have to cut down on his pick ratio, or Michigan State is no shot. And of course, this brings to mind some pretty important Michigan State-Oregon games from about 10 years ago. Right after Oregon, I think one of the games was en route to the national championship game against Ohio State. And then in 2015, they played back-to-back games. Michigan State, Connor Cook could not keep up at Oregon. I was going to try to recite a score for that game, but I won't try to rack my brain. But it was roughly 45-30 or something like that. And then Michigan State won the return trip against Vernon Adams and company. Yes. For the Oregon Ducks. So Oregon, Michigan State get together. They also played a bowl game. That was Mark D'Antonio against Willie Taggart, I believe, in 2017 in the, what do they call that? The Red Card Bowl? Shoot, I'm missing the name of that. In Palo Alto, 7-6 game. All right, enough trivia here at the Voice of College Football. That's why we have the off season. We will continue to talk 2024 Ohio State, Iowa. We've got Corey Braddis stopping by from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And of course, the standard Ohio State crew with Steve Hellwagon and Tony Girdman next on the Ohio State channel. Join us there for Buckeyes and Hawkeyes breakdown. And then as you can see on the ticker down below, I'm on at 2 o'clock with Leanne Herring for the Ole Miss Live show. Then we've got me and the Renegade Report, George, and Big James Coleman at 6 p.m. on Florida State. We've got myself and Cam Underwood with Miami at 7. We've got the Notre Dame show with Brian Driscoll and myself at 8. We've got another West Virginia show with Frank Fear at 8. We've got the Clemson All-In show at 8 with Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paw Craven. And then again, Oregon Live at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget about the USC Film Study with Matt Zemek on the USC channel. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern and 7 Pacific. Right here at the Voice of College Football. See you in 5 minutes on the Buckeyes channel, talking Ohio State, Iowa. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.